American military patrol flights over the South China Sea have decreased by 30% as Washington redirects resources toward Middle East operations. This adjustment carries profound implications for the Philippines, whose territorial waters intersect with some of the region's most contested maritime zones. The reduction unfolds against continued Chinese expansion in the South China Sea, where artificial islands equipped with military infrastructure and Coast Guard vessels maintain increasingly assertive patrols. Waters that carry 1/3 of global maritime trade now witness a fundamental shift in deterrent presence. Deterrence relies on visibility. When that presence diminishes, regional actors must recalibrate their assessments of risk, opportunity, and strategic positioning. For the Philippines, positioned at the center of overlapping territorial claims, this recalibration carries particular urgency. American patrol operations in the South China Sea represent more than surveillance missions. They constitute what defense analysts term presence operations. Calculated demonstrations of capability and resolve that communicate strategic intent without direct confrontation. Each P-8 Poseidon flight or B-52 bomber transit serves as a visible reminder of American power projection capabilities and commitment to freedom of navigation principles. These operations function within established deterrence frameworks. Consistent presence maintains regional stability through predictable demonstration of capability. The economic dimensions of these waters amplify the strategic significance. Maritime trade routes through the South China Sea facilitate approximately $5 trillion in annual commerce, connecting Asian manufacturing centers with global markets. For the Philippines, an archipelagic nation dependent on maritime commerce, these sea lanes represent critical economic infrastructure. Recent confrontations illustrate the practical consequences of shifting deterrence dynamics. At 2nd Thomas Shoal, Philippine forces maintaining positions aboard the grounded BRP Sierra Madre face increasingly coordinated harassment during resupply operations. Chinese Coast Guard vessels employ water cannons, conduct ramming attempts, and implement systematic blockade tactics designed to exhaust Philippine resolve. Perception shapes escalation more than capability alone. The situation at Scarborough Shoal demonstrates more advanced Chinese control mechanisms. Despite the Philippines' 2016 arbitration victory at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which invalidated Chinese territorial claims under international law, Beijing maintains effective administrative control through persistent Coast Guard presence. Filipino fishermen who once harvested these waters now navigate Chinese checkpoints. Their traditional fishing grounds have become contested territory. The reduction in South China Sea patrols reflects standard military resource allocation responding to immediate security requirements. Current Middle East tensions, Gaza operations, Iranian proxy activities, and Houthi disruptions of Red Sea shipping have necessitated significant asset redeployment. Defense planning typically prioritizes immediate threats over longer-term strategic positioning. Yet deterrence theory suggests that even temporary reductions in visible presence create what strategists term opportunity windows for rival powers to test boundaries and advance positions. American investment in Indo-Pacific infrastructure over the past decade indicates continued long-term strategic commitment. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement grants American forces access to 9 Philippine military installations. Defense cooperation initiatives have accelerated military modernization programs. Base agreements and alliance strengthening demonstrate institutional depth beyond patrol frequency. The timing proves significant. Reduced patrols coincide with intensified Chinese assertiveness in disputed areas. Chinese Coast Guard activity has increased around Philippine-controlled features, while artificial island militarization has accelerated systematically. The fundamental question is not whether American power has diminished, but where American attention has shifted. From Beijing's perspective, any reduction in American patrols represents potential strategic opportunity, regardless of stated American intentions or future commitments. The critical distinction emerges between capability decline and visibility decline, two phenomena that produce different strategic effects but similar perceptual outcomes. Regional allies must distinguish between tactical adjustments and strategic shifts. In deterrence psychology, perception often carries equal weight with actual capability changes, creating risks that temporary adjustments may be interpreted as permanent strategic retreat. Among Southeast Asian claimants, the Philippines occupies the most exposed geographical position in South China Sea disputes. The nation's archipelagic structure places it in direct proximity to heavily contested areas, including the Spratly Islands where multiple nations maintain competing territorial claims. Unlike regional neighbors that have adopted more cautious diplomatic approaches, the Philippines has maintained relatively assertive positions regarding territorial rights. This stance increases dependence on American security guarantees. Alliance mechanisms become essential for effective deterrence against potential Chinese expansion. The human dimension of these disputes extends beyond abstract abstract geopolitical calculations. Filipino fishermen operating in traditional fishing grounds regularly encounter Chinese Coast Guard vessels equipped with military-grade equipment. These confrontations affect economic livelihoods while testing sovereignty assertions in waters where families have fished for generations. Following incidents at Ayungin Shoal, fishermen report systematic harassment including water cannon attacks, vessel ramming, and seizure of fishing equipment. The Coast Guard presence transforms routine fishing operations into assertions of territorial sovereignty. Civilian operators find themselves at the center of strategic competition. The 2016 arbitration ruling represented a significant legal victory that Beijing declined to recognize or implement. The ruling established clear legal precedent regarding Chinese territorial claims. Yet enforcement mechanisms remain dependent on credible deterrent capabilities rather than legal authority alone. Legal victories require enforcement mechanisms. The Mutual Defense Treaty, established in 1951, commits the United States to defend the Philippines against armed attacks. However, treaty interpretation regarding maritime incidents in disputed waters maintains deliberate ambiguity. Threshold conditions for American military response remain uncertain. Philippine military modernization has accelerated significantly in recent years. New frigates, FA-50 fighter aircraft, and advanced radar systems have entered service. The acquisition of BrahMos supersonic missiles from India provides credible, long-range strike capabilities that complicate potential aggressor calculations. Nevertheless, substantial capability gaps persist, particularly in maritime domain awareness and sustained naval operations. Chinese leadership views the South China Sea through the lens of core national interests tied to economic security, energy access, and potential Taiwan conflict scenarios. Official Chinese statements consistently characterize regional activities as defensive, measures protecting legitimate territorial rights within what Beijing terms indisputable sovereignty. Artificial island development, Coast Guard deployments, and administrative structure establishment reflect Chinese concepts of active defense, and securing claimed territories through persistent presence rather than dramatic military action that might trigger international responses. Chinese strategy exemplifies sophisticated gray zone operations that advance strategic objectives while remaining below thresholds that might trigger military responses from the United States or regional allies. Cumulative advantage develops through persistent low-level pressure that normalizes Chinese presence and control mechanisms. Gray zone operations accumulate strategic gains below escalation thresholds. Reduced American patrol flights create what Chinese strategic planners likely assess as enhanced operational space. Opportunities to test boundaries and advance positions with diminished risk of immediate American response or international attention multiply during periods of reduced visibility. Chinese strategic culture emphasizes patience and incremental advancement over dramatic confrontation. The artificial islands serve multiple strategic functions, demonstrating sovereignty claims, providing military staging capabilities, and creating physical facts that complicate rival nations' strategic calculations while normalizing Chinese administrative control. American investment in multilateral Indo-Pacific partnerships addresses scenarios where competing resource demands require allied burden sharing. This represents a structural shift from bilateral deterrence toward multilateral security architecture, though the transition creates its own vulnerabilities. Japan has emerged as a crucial Philippine partner, providing patrol vessels, radar systems, and training programs that enhance maritime security capabilities. Japanese maritime self-defense force exercises with Philippine forces have intensified. Japanese vessels have increased South China Sea presence through joint patrol operations and freedom of navigation assertions. Indian defense cooperation offers additional strategic depth through technology transfer programs, while Australian defense relationships have expanded through joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and capability development programs. ASEAN dynamics present more complex challenges. Vietnam maintains its own territorial claims and has demonstrated resistance to Chinese pressure, but prefers diplomatic solutions over military confrontation. Malaysia attempts to balance economic relationships with China against sovereignty concerns, while avoiding provocative actions that might invite Chinese retaliation. These varying national approaches limit organizational effectiveness as a unified response mechanism. Multilateral partnerships cannot fully substitute great power deterrence. Regional cooperation has strengthened considerably, yet no combination of Indo-Pacific partners can match American military capabilities or provide equivalent deterrent value against potential Chinese territorial expansion or administrative consolidation. Current circumstances present multiple possible developments that illuminate the distinction between temporary tactical adjustments and structural strategic recalibration. The most favorable scenario involves temporary tactical adjustment, with American patrols resuming normal levels following resolution of Middle East tensions. Even temporary reductions may encourage Chinese probing actions that establish new operational precedents or normalize previously contested behaviors. Strategic environments can shift permanently through accumulated tactical adjustments that individually appear insignificant. A second scenario involves broader American strategic adjustment toward enhanced burden sharing, arrangements where regional partners assume greater responsibility for routine deterrence activities. Strategic transitions create temporary vulnerabilities during periods when capabilities remain underdeveloped while coordination mechanisms prove inadequate for complex contingencies. Alternative American engagement methods might emphasize episodic high-visibility operations, advanced technology deployments, or expanded intelligence sharing arrangements. These approaches could maintain deterrent effects while accommodating resource constraints, though they fundamentally alter the nature of deterrent presence. The most challenging scenario involves permanent reduction in American engagement, whether through strategic choice or continued resource demands in other theaters. This would necessitate fundamental reconsideration of Philippine security strategy and potentially require alternative security arrangements. Each scenario carries different implications for Chinese strategic behavior, with the decisive factor becoming Chinese assessment of American long-term commitment rather than immediate patrol levels. Sustained reductions may gradually alter those assessments in ways that encourage more assertive Chinese behavior. The 30% reduction in American patrol flights presents the Philippines with challenges that extend beyond immediate security calculations. The adjustment creates opportunities for strategic repositioning within a regional order experiencing gradual but significant transformation. Strategic leverage requires diversified partnerships. While reduced American presence may encourage Chinese assertiveness in the near term, it creates incentives for accelerated multilateral partnership development and indigenous capability building that could prove strategically beneficial over extended timeframes. The Philippines' position at the center of great power competition provides strategic leverage despite inherent vulnerabilities. Manila's geographic location, democratic governance, and alliance relationships make it an attractive partner for multiple nations seeking to maintain regional balance. Rather than interpreting reduced American patrols as strategic abandonment, Philippine policymakers might approach this development as an opportunity to diversify security partnerships while accelerating military modernization programs. A comprehensive approach combining American alliance guarantees, Japanese technological cooperation, Indian defense transfers, and Australian intelligence sharing could create more resilient security architecture than exclusive dependence on American patrol presence. The South China Sea's importance to global commerce ensures continued international attention regardless of temporary patrol adjustments. Strategic environments in contested waters require careful calibration of diplomatic, military, and economic instruments. The Philippines must maintain territorial integrity while avoiding escalation that proves counterproductive to long-term security interests. Success depends on skillful management of relationships with all regional parties while steadily building indigenous capabilities that reduce dependence on external security providers. In waters where sovereignty disputes intersect with great power competition, strategic balances evolve through accumulated incremental changes that often appear routine until their cumulative effect becomes apparent. The Philippines confronts the challenge of positioning itself advantageously within this gradual transformation while preserving flexibility to adapt as circumstances continue to evolve. The current moment represents neither crisis nor opportunity in isolation, but rather a recalibration of strategic relationships that will define regional order for the decade ahead. How Manila navigates this transition may determine whether the South China Sea becomes a theater of managed competition or escalating confrontation.